So, hello, my name is Ara Grimaldo, and I'm the executive director at After to Educate. And today I have the honor and privilege to sit and just learn a little bit more about Brice's story. I met Brice a few weeks ago as a volunteer for After to Educate, and has just been a phenomenal asset to the organization and just learning about his story. As some of you may know, November is National Homeless Youth Awareness Month, and there are about more than 2.5 million youth that every year that experience homelessness, and that's from self-reporting. So I'm sure there's many more. And so After to Educate is committed to bringing awareness to the issue, and the entire month will be having events and just sharing information so that more of us are aware of it and come together to do something about it. So Brice, thank you so much for making the time to interview and have this space, share this space with you. You're doing great work. You're out in the community right now, serving and making a difference. So that just speaks volumes to what this is about, our community effort. And so a little bit about Brice. He's a customer experience leader with Chewy.com, which brought him to Dallas about 2 years ago, and him and his wife Jody are raising two teenagers and a 21-year-old in New York to be engaged, active citizens by demonstrating volunteerism and social justice as often as possible, which he is doing right now. So Brice, thank you again for being here and just having a conversation with us about youth homelessness. So we could dive in and just, I don't know if I missed something you want to share a little bit, just, about your upbringing and kind of bring us back and where you're at now.
Yeah, for sure. So super excited to get to do this with your organization. Having heard like an NPR story shortly after moving to Dallas, I was like, wow, I need to connect with these people. Because what stuck out for me was 25 years ago, I was a homeless youth. And it's probably not the kind of homelessness that most people think about. I was homeless in a rural Western Pennsylvania town of about 1,700 people. So being 17 and homeless in a town that size, everyone knows you're the homeless kid. It was a very different experience. I think probably the best place to start with it is just being 17 years old. Homelessness became a choice. I had a pretty typical like rural middle class upbringing. Went to support myself and my sister doing activities. We didn't want for stuff at home, right? Like we weren't rich, but bills were paid, people were fed, we had clothes, and we were still able to do sports and music and other activities. I think a lot of what took me to the place of deciding homelessness was an option for me as a teenager was that I didn't really connect with my family's value set. And whether that was the right or the wrong thing, time will tell. But for me, I decided that I was going to go and try and make it on my own. And really what that led to was a place where at 17 years old in a rural part of the country, even having a job, like I couldn't sign a lease. So a lot of my experience with homelessness was a couple nights a week. I was able to crash at someone's house. Maybe their parents were kind enough to realize I didn't have a place to stay, or not really ask about the situation, or even kind enough to feed me. But there were definitely 2 to 3 nights a week, if not more, that I slept outside somewhere, and doing it in Western Pennsylvania meant that the wintertime became a particular challenge. I held a job most of the time that I was homeless, and I was, actively working at a local restaurant. But at the end of the day, it just became one of those things where no one would let me sign a lease, no matter what I could prove financially, until I turned 18. One of the big pieces that I decided that was an option for me, to be, very transparent, was substance abuse issues. For me as a 17-year-old, it was more important to party, which involves drinking and drugs at that point of my life, than it was to do the things that society says, like, hey, just like straighten up and like fly right, man. So that became a big piece of that struggle for me. From that period in homelessness, that really continued for a number of years and kind of kept me on the edge. When I did turn 18, I was able to get an apartment with some other folks, all of us teenagers, and all of us kind of on that edge. Some folks with good family backgrounds, some folks with not great family backgrounds. But that living experience I could best describe as it was a crash pad. There were 2 bedrooms, and there were often sometimes 5 or 6 people living in there at a time. There was just a lot of like partying and itinerancy. Like there were people in and out. In the span of 7 months, I had no less than 7 different roommates. Most people weren't there longer than 5 or 6 weeks at a stretch, and then we were trying to find somebody else who would help pay the rent or whatever it was. After about a year and a half of being gone from my parents' home, they approached me about if I'd be willing to come home, that they would help me pay for college. And so like that's another piece of my story that I'm incredibly fortunate to have that, because that's what got me out of homelessness and off of some of the places that were most directly connected to like being on the edge of having a home and being safe in that regard. It led me to college, but I can still say that those substance abuse issues continued for years in my life. And even though I was a college student and had a place to stay, it kept me on the edge for a number of years after that. Whether it was constantly worrying about retaining an apartment after moving out of the college dorms because money was spent in places it shouldn't have been, or whether it was the few years after college before starting to kind of, get a little bit of a life together. All throughout graduate school, I still struggled to deal with finances in the right way, as opposed to, dealing with substance abuse issues. And that led me to a place where, if I hadn't been willing to take a step forward in my life and correct some of those issues and find a way to not deal with alcohol and drugs anymore, then I certainly wouldn't be where I am today. Today I'm able to have a pretty awesome career. I've worked for a couple of really great companies over the last years. I put together some time working for Wayfair, the furniture company, and then was able to meet a really wonderful woman and help her raise a couple of kids, and identify that we wanted to, take this opportunity and move to the Dallas area in order to give our kids more opportunity. And for today, for me, like that's a lot of why I look at giving back, because there were people in my life, whether it was my parents who were willing to, provide some of that support and lift me out of things, or other people, teachers and other folks who helped me get sober. I wouldn't be where I am today. I wouldn't have been able to get outside of that environment that I chose to put myself in. So I think that's a pretty good summation of my journey from there to here.
Great, thanks, Brice. And you kind of touched on my next question was, how did you overcome this adversity of homelessness? But it seems, you've had supportive individuals, your family. You mentioned, just these adults in your life that have kind of guided and supported you in this journey of life. I don't know if there's anything else you in thinking about the youth that we serve, what other things have supported you in addressing this and overcoming it?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of big pieces, right? Like my own socioeconomic background afforded me some opportunities that many of the folks who are in homelessness don't have. And I'm super conscious of that, because if I'm not willing to help give back to others, then they're not going to be there. But then there's a piece of it too of finding the right way to do the outreach, because I know for a lot of that time I wasn't open to the support of other people. I couldn't identify that they wanted to help me rather than they wanted to put me someplace. And I think the other piece that really I look at as a way out is the education piece. Sure, I had the opportunity to go and get formal education, but a big piece of that too was being willing to dive into informal education, right? Like literacy and reading and all those sorts of things that I was given the advantage of before I chose homelessness were things that helped me be able to get out of it in the long term. And even to see that like this is an area of opportunity for lots of people. I had the option called Alternative Spring Break, and the faculty member who led our group and advised us was also super passionate about homelessness, and so that was one of the things we ended up doing. Like one of our fundraisers was a homelessness awareness where we camped out in the wintertime, in February, in the cold, in Western Pennsylvania, to help educate people around campus about what homelessness looks like, and really trying to show that college population that, you know, it's not that hard to go from where we are walking around, living in dorms and going into colleges, to being someone who's sleeping in, if you're lucky, a sleeping bag in the cold on the street. So I count a lot of those experiences and the things that were afforded to me as part of what helped pull me out. And I think that, you know, organizations like yours or any of the partnering organizations around Dallas that are to find and get pack full of laundry, let me help you clean that. So if you're going to go for a job interview, you don't smell like you've been living under a bridge. Those are huge, huge things to help show people they're.
So Brice, you cut off for a little bit towards the end, but I heard, you know, the power of having the community involved in, you know, your journey, and just this, you know, matter of youth homelessness is that we all have to come together and, but also want it, right? With the youth need a, they, you know, say yes to the support. And so we're all kind of on this journey of bringing awareness and supporting them. And I just have two more questions for you. If you could go back to your when you were a youth and then you made that choice of leaving your home, what now as an adult, what would you tell yourself? Or what words would you impart?
Yeah. So I think there's pieces of me as like an adult raising teenagers that would want to tell myself like, look, man, just like stick it out, like don't do that. But I think too that it was a piece for me that helped me understand just how difficult life was going to be without support, and throwing away the support of people who love and care about you probably isn't the right way to go. So I don't know. If I had to talk to that 17-year-old version of Brice, A, he probably wouldn't have listened to me because I'm like super old and stupid. But B, I probably would say, listen, if you really want to do it, do it. It's going to be a lot harder than you think it is. Because I think that's the piece that I never expected. I expected that, like, I knew what I was talking about. Obviously, if I had a job and money, I was going to be able to do stuff. And that's just not the case. It takes a lot of support and love from all angles, whether it's our family or families we put together.
Right. Yeah, and I think you made a good point too, that homelessness can impact anyone. I mean, you were at a 2-parent household. So when we talk about raising awareness and couch surfing, I mean, you're considered homeless and there's services available for you. So I think a lot of times, the youth we serve, they think because that's their case, but they're not homeless. And so, you know, wanting them to know that we care and we are here for them, and, you know, that people like you, now you're giving back and helping the community. And so that's not their end, it's just part of their story. And I think you are a great example of that, that you overcame that. It was just a little part of it, and now you're changing that narrative and giving back. So I have one last question, and it's we're changing gears. What's your favorite food? You're in Texas now, so I don't know if that's changed, but
Yeah, I don't know. So for a long time, my two favorite foods have been pizza and tacos. So I was a little concerned, you know, coming from places close to New York City or the Northeast that have like a really great pizza culture. But I can say that I found both. Whoops, there we go. I found both to be pretty awesome here. And of course, like the tacos are amazing. So I don't know. Being here in Texas now, I think tacos are going to have to win out a little bit.
right. Yeah, New York does have the coast, New York, all of their pizza is pretty good. So and our tacos are really good too. So that's definitely a hard one because I love both as well. So well, Brice, you know, just last minute wisdom words that you want to share with our youth that may be watching, you know, this conversation, you know, to let them know that we care. Like, is there anything that you'd like to share before we wrap up?
Yeah, I think the best thing I could put out there is the two hardest things I've had to learn in life are that it's okay to ask for help, because if I don't ask for help, then no one knows I need it. And in learning how to be okay with other people caring about me and loving me. Those were really hard things for me to do. And, you know, maybe going back to your earlier question, maybe that's what I would tell the 17-year-old version of Brice is be okay with asking for help and be okay with people caring about you and loving you. Because at the end of the day, those are the things that have allowed me to do something different with my life. But I had to be open to those things first.
Right. Well, I love that. And again, thank you so much for making time and doing the good work and volunteering at After Eight, and just the entire story of how you heard about us, and now you're plugged in, and now your family, your community, and so thank you for everything, and you have a great day, and thank you, and you know, we'll see you at our next event.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you so much. This was a real pleasure, and I'm super excited to keep helping you folks do the great work that you're doing.
Thanks, Brice.
Take care now.
All righty. Bye-bye. Wait, no, crap. Here, he left.